From there, in the spotlight tonight, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and Republican frontrunner Donald Trump have both won 7 out of 11 states on the biggest day of the U.S. presidential nominations. Super Tuesday saw 11 states voting, and a 12-state Colorado held a caucus, which was won by the Democrat Bernie Sanders. But the state does not actually select its delegates until April. From the Republican camp, Ted Cruz took 3 states while Marco Rubio came in with 1. So Super Tuesday essentially allocates nearly a quarter of Republican delegates and about 1/5 of Democratic delegates. So it's a big day for those who are in the race for the White House. They will elect their caucuses and the primaries do elect their respective presidential candidates at party conventions in July. No candidate has yet won enough delegates to secure their party's nominations, and in fact, these are just ghost delegates for now. No one really knows who these people actually really are, so it's just wait and watch.
Watched Hillary's speech, and she's talking about wages have been poor and everything's doing badly, but we're going to make it. She's been there for so long. I mean, if she hasn't straightened it out by now, she's not going to straighten it out in the next 4 years. It's just going to become worse and worse. She wants to make America whole again, and I'm trying to figure out what is that all about. Make America great again is going to be much better than making America whole again.
I believe what we need in America today is more love and kindness. Because you know what? You know what? It works. Instead of building walls, we're going to break down barriers and build ladders of opportunity and empowerment so every American can live up to his or her potential, because then and only then can America live up to its full potential.
So love and kindness seems to be the way forward for Hillary Clinton, but can anybody stop Donald Trump? CNBC's John Harwood caught up with John Kasich, who's also in the running for the Republican Party nomination. He filed this report.
The question is there a viable play that they can call to try to win this game against Donald Trump? You've got Marco Rubio, John Kasich, Ted Cruz. All of them have arguments to make. They're just not very strong arguments. Here's John Kasich just a few minutes ago with you guys on your set.
We didn't expect Super Tuesday to go very well, but we almost beat Trump in Vermont. We split delegates. We got the same number of delegates. Finished second in Massachusetts. We picked up delegates in Virginia. It was a good night for us, much better than expectations. And now, you know, we're getting into the March Madness, right? We're moving towards the Final Four, and it goes to home court for me. We get up to Michigan and then, most important, Ohio.
Now, check out the map. John Kasich said it was a good night for him, but look how good it was for Donald Trump. He won most of the contests last night. He did lose to Ted Cruz in Texas. That kept Ted Cruz alive. Cruz also won in Oklahoma and in Alaska. Marco Rubio finally got his first victory in the caucuses in Minnesota, but he fell short in Virginia. All of these guys are struggling to find some foothold against Donald Trump. Now, take a look at the Democratic map. Bernie Sanders is in the same predicament. Hillary Clinton won most places on Super Tuesday. She rolled over Bernie Sanders in the South on the strength of those African-American voters, very loyal to her. Now, Bernie Sanders did win his native state of Vermont. He won in Oklahoma. He also won the caucuses in Colorado, won in Minnesota as well. But, you know, Bernie Sanders has got a challenge trying to, even though he has money, even though he has a constituency, make a credible argument that he can stop Hillary Clinton from this nomination. Now, big contests, as John Kasich indicated. When we go to Ohio and Florida, Rubio and Kasich both need to win there. But if they don't, we are likely looking at a Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump general election, guys.
Right, so that was John Howard wrapping up all the action for us. But now for more perspective on that, I'm joined by John Rains. He's US political analyst at IHS in London. Thank you, John, for joining us on the show today. Let me start by asking you this. Now, it seems almost certain, and there's a fair possibility that Donald Trump might just clinch the Republican nomination. I don't see Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, let alone Ben Carson and John Kasich, giving him much of a fight. Do you think that it's a clear road ahead now for Donald Trump?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a clear road. I think we have to wait until March the 15th. Certainly, he is leading in the polls in most regions in the country, so that cannot be debated. But there is some apprehension about a Trump candidacy through many parts of the Republican Party. So I think you need to wait, see what's going to happen in Ohio, winner take all states, see if maybe Kasich can do well in Michigan. And then we're going to have to drift our eyes down to Florida and see if Rubio can pick up support. Most of the polls say that Trump is ahead there, but you know, it is Rubio's home state. Maybe he'll be able to pick up a Jeb Bush endorsement and maybe might be able to surprise people there.
Right, John. Now, so far, we've been seeing a lot of commentary coming in on how Donald Trump's voters are mostly lower-class Republicans. But now I see, I mean, if you go by a lot of commentary online, and I do go online to watch a lot of videos and actually go and read the comments, it does seem like there are a lot of affluent Americans with postgraduate degrees also coming out in support of him. Now, I'm sure you must have seen this article in the Financial Times today, this letter that was written by a couple. I'd like to quote a part of that letter. It's slightly long, but I think it's worth it. Now, it says, and I quote, "The Republican tribunes, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, are backward, foolish, and inexperienced. John Kasich, a moderate with extensive governmental experience and a willingness to compromise, is an also-ran. That leaves the Donald really a moderate in wolf's garb, who would owe nothing to either party and might strike deals, for instance, on tax reforms." Would you agree with that assessment in that letter? Is he a moderate in wolf's garb?
Well, I think it really depends. I mean, certainly he is a different type of Republican candidate than we've seen in the past. If you look at his stances on, say, trade policy, his stances on Social Security, Medicare, those are by far farther to the left than we've seen with other Republican candidates. That being said, he's still relatively conservative, especially on issues of governance and also issues on immigration. So I don't know necessarily he's a liberal in wolf's garb, but certainly there are certain positions that actually alienate him from many people within the Republican Party. As far as those other kind of announcements, whether they're also-rans or incapable of getting the nomination, again, we have to see, does the Republican establishment, the Republican base, coalesce around another candidate? Right now, they're very divided, but maybe as this thing goes forward and additional individuals start losing states, maybe it's possible they do find a candidate that they end up liking. The question is, do they have the time?
Right, so essentially it's wait and watch. Now there's another angle to this. For example, earlier today, we saw Tony Blair's comments come in saying that it's actually a frightening prospect, Donald Trump candidacy. We also saw not too long ago, British parliamentarians were up in arms over suggestions from him that you should actually temporarily ban Muslims from entry into the United States. In fact, the IHS Vice President Dan Yergin himself today said that there were concerns surrounding his candidacy. My question to you is this: how do you think American allies, especially in Europe, are receiving Donald Trump's, in essence, you could call it a rise to power of sorts?
Well, I think that it's going to be interesting to tell. I think that there are certain individuals in Europe that actually might not necessarily oppose a Trump presidency, not so much based on ideology or on policies, but they like the idea possibly that there's a businessman at the helm, not a traditional politician at the helm. I mean, that being said, I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether there's any reaction by the publics, which, of course, we saw quite a bit of public reaction, both the Obama presidency and also the Bush presidency. Does that come to the fore and to actually start pushing politicians to actually make positions? We haven't seen that many yet, but it's certainly something to look for.
Right. Also now moving to the Democratic camp, Hillary Clinton today emerged as a clear front-runner, winning 7 states out of 11. But Bernie Sanders, he didn't do too shabbily either. He got 4 seats there. I mean, 4 states there. He's not hanging up his boots yet. He has promised to continue on. Do you think he has a fair chance going ahead in this election?
Well, I mean, it's always possible. Some of the states that are coming up in the next few weeks, not necessarily so much on March 15th, but coming up in the next few weeks are caucuses. He tends to do much better in those. The demographic could start favoring him a little bit more, especially if we start to see the races going more towards the Midwest and the West. He'll do slightly better there, and also the Northeast. he does have still a problem with delegates, and that can't be discounted. Not only is he losing in the delegate count, he's also losing in the superdelegate count, which of course is delegates that are applied to politicians and the sort. And so he's losing in several fronts. He's going to need a tricky hand to play in order to get the nomination. He still has a chance, but it's going to be difficult.
John, I need to ask you this question. I mean, there seems to be a slight lack of clarity, at least here, because we're not very familiar with the U.S. election process. Now, they say that the delegate count, what we see right now, is essentially just ghost delegates. What does that mean?
Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last little part. That it was which delegates?
Ghost delegates, in essence, that the delegates are not really appointed yet. No one really knows who they are. These are just ghost delegates, or in essence, just virtual delegates that are out there.
Sure. Yeah. So what you're seeing there is that there's certain delegates.
How
It depends on every. Sure. So what's happened here is that certain states have different rules. In several of these states, they have what's called bound delegates. These are delegates that are decided by the voters after they reach a certain threshold, and they are guaranteed supporters of that candidate at the convention. But then we have unbound delegates. And what those are politicians or representatives from individual congressional districts, and they can vote for whomever they want to, right? And some states actually nominate in that fashion. And if that is the case, these guys can side with whoever they want, and if they don't like a Donald Trump, they can oppose him at the convention, and that could same be with Ted Cruz and also Marco Rubio.
Right. Thanks, John. That was a clarification that we did need. Now, my final question to you, since we're running out of time, if it were to boil down to an actual Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump race finally towards the end, who would you put your bet on? Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton?
I tell you what, I'm tired of making bets. I always seem to lose them. I think both candidates have certain positives and negatives going into this race. So certainly if you look at the polls, some of them have Hillary Clinton slightly ahead, and others say it's a little bit closer race than that, anywhere in the mark of 2 to 3 points. I mean, Trump is going to have to also appeal to a general elective audience, and so that means getting some of these Republicans that are disaffected actually coming back and doing his campaign. That's going to be important. But also on top of that, Hillary Clinton has got to coalesce her base as well. Some of these individuals will be upset with Bernie Sanders losing, and so therefore has to appeal to them while also veering towards the center as well. It should be an amazing race.
Right, and like someone rightly said, it's already been wild, and it's probably just going to get wild. Thank you, John Raines, for joining us on the show today. It was a pleasure having you, and we look forward to speaking you again in the future as this race goes on. Thank you so much. And on that note, we have to take a break, but more news.